Well, hello and a very good evening, eighthers. How are you all doing? I guess this will be my second video in a day after geography, history. Uh, it does become a tad bit boring to see the same person speaking behind the or same person speaking on the screen, but then you'll have to bear with me, and we're going to start a new chapter. That is the American Civil War. What is actually a civil war first? When we talk of a civil war, there are wars like one country fighting with another. That is an inter-country war when two countries are fighting. But what is a civil war? A civil war is when the people of the same country fight against each other. Now, suppose if in India some people or people of some state start fighting with the people of some other state, that will be a civil war. If some citizens of India start protesting and fighting with other citizens of India, that will be a civil war. So, civil war is a situation or is a state in which the people of the same country fight against each other due to some problem or the other, or due to some difference in their opinions and the difference in their outlook. Now, the American Civil War happened because there were many reasons, but the one most important reason which led to the American Civil War was because of the institution of slavery. Slavery was prevalent in America as it was in so many other places of the world. And it was because of this slavery. Later on, there were many incidents, but slavery became the most important reason why the people of America fought against each other. Now, if we are to understand something about or if we are to understand the Civil War, we should keep some things in mind. Now, when we talk of India, there are 28 states as of today, not 29. Jammu and Kashmir is not a state, it is an union territory. It has been made into union territory as of last year, 2019. But we have 28 states, and none of the states of India have that power, or none of the states can decide that suddenly the states will be deciding that let us just move out of the Indian territory or out of the Indian Union and declare ourselves to be independent. That cannot be done because because India, the states of India, are not. We have not come together based on a treaty. The country India came first, and then the states were formed after the country India was formed. So India is called a destructible union of indestructible states. What it is, I'll be explaining later on, or you'll be understanding. I said India is a destructible union of indestructible states. When we talk of America, it is a destructible union of destructible states. What does it mean over here? It means that right now America has 50 states, and those 50 states of America, the 50 states have come together based on a treaty, or there is an understanding amongst all those 50 states, and they have come together, and those 50 states are together because of their own mutual benefits and understanding. But if one state wants to come out of this union and become independent, it has the power and the right to do so, because the American Union is a union of states, but India is not a union of states. In India, the country came first and then the states came. In America, the states were there first and they came together to form the country of America. That is why it is called the United States of America. So the states can, if they want, of America, come out of the union and become independent. This was what was happening in the American Civil War. The southern states, they wanted to come out of the American Union. So coming out of an union is called secession. SECESSION, secession. So American states, the southern states wanted to secede from the American Union, and the northern states did not want this to happen because they knew if the American or if the southern states seceded from the American Union, then it will lead to the fall of the American Union, disintegration of the American Union, and also it will be an end to the dream that is of America, end to the American dream, and also all their hopes and their whatever they were pinning or whatever hopes they had of the future, that hope or those hopes will be shattered. So the Americans, the North Americans, did not want or would not allow this to happen. The president at that time was Abraham Lincoln, and he was a very able president. And it was because of his leadership that America survived. The states, the southern states, could not get out of that American Union. There was a fight in which more than 6 lakh people died in both the sides. The southern states, they formed an army. The northern states, or the northern states, was having their own army. And I mean, the Union army was belonging to the northern states. So the Union army fought against the southern army. There was a fighting which went on, and in the end, the southern states had to surrender, and the American Union survived. And because of that, America is great today, or whatever it is that you all know about America. It is because of that time's leadership of Abraham Lincoln. Now, coming to the reasons which led to the American Civil War, let me just well, after the American, or after America got independence, yesterday was the 4th of July, which is celebrated as the American Independence Day. 4th of July 1776 is celebrated as the American Independence Day. I mean, not 1776, it was on 1776 that they signed the Declaration of Independence. But after that, after America got independent independence from the Britishers, the Americans, the northern and the southern states, there was always a divide kind of a sort. The northern states, later on, they became heavily industrialized states, and the southern states were dependent on agriculture. They were agriculturists, and they had plantation agriculture. What do we understand when we say plantation agriculture? Plantation agriculture is that kind of agriculture in which cash crops are grown. And why are the cash crops grown? Because cash crops bring in more amount of money. Cash crops as in cashew, cash crops as in tobacco, tea, coffee, cotton. These are cash crops. So cash crops were grown mainly in those southern states. Now, America is one of the largest countries of the world, but the population of America is around 300 million, that is around 30 crore. And the population of India, as it was in 2011, according to the 2011 census, it is 130 crore. India happens to be the 7th largest country. America is somewhere around the third, or the third largest or the fourth largest country. So America is a much greater country than, or bigger country than India. But the population of America even today is very less compared to India. So back in the 1800s, the American population was even lesser, and less population. Back in those days, in 1800s, EU did not have, or the Americans did not have those, or access to large amounts of mechanized or automatic machines which could help in agriculture. These days they have so many automatic machines which help in agriculture, but back then that was not the case. So a lot of manpower or labor was required, and labor which was there, Americans did not have their own population. So where to get the labor? The labor problem was solved by Britain itself. Britain was in the 1700s, 1800s, Britain was one of the most important country which dealt in the slave trade. Britain used to, there is a coast till today in Africa which is known as the slave coast. Britain, or people from England, they used to go to Africa, capture people, capture the people of Africa, put them onto boats, and then sell them in the markets, or the slave markets of America and so many other places and continents. The southern American states and the people of South America, not South America, the southern states of America, they bought these slaves, and those slaves were treated as private properties by the slave owners. They had no rights as such, they were not citizens of America, and they could not do anything on their own. Their entire life was controlled by the people of, or by the slave owners, who were mainly the people of the southern states of America. So those southern states, or the southern people, had lots and lots of slaves, and these slaves were used in the plantation agriculture and the other agricultural activities. Now, south, or the southern states, were rich in agriculture. Northern states, they were developing economically and industrially, so they needed labor, and they needed labor. Now labor, according to the labor laws and according to so many other laws of the land, labor could not be made to work forcefully in the industries. So the Americans needed labor to come and work in their industries. So they removed, the northern states discouraged slave system, and the northern states removed the slave systems long before, in the starting of the 1800s. The southern states did not do any such thing. So the northern states ended the slave system and they stopped keeping slaves, and they used those slaves, and the slaves now became free, and those free slaves were, or the free people, the free Negroes, the Africans, they were now able to work in the American industries at lower wages, but still they were free. So the North Americans, the people of the northern states of America, they wanted the slaves to become free so as to work in their industries. But the people of the southern states did not want so. Because if the slaves became free, who would work on their fields and who would work on their agricultural and plantation farms? And that too for free. So this was one reason why there was a dispute. Some other reasons were like the Americans wanted, or the people of the northern states, or the industrialists, they wanted to expand the industries towards newer areas, newer places, and for that they needed land. They also, you all know that industries can work, or industries can have much more profit if there is proper railway and roadways system. So the Americans, the people of northern states, and the industrialists especially wanted to lay huge amounts of roadways and railway lines which would go through the southern states also. Now the people of the southern states did not want all these things to happen, because if railways and roadways were to be laid on the land, then that would decrease the fertility of the land and would also take away so much of their land. So they did not want all these things to happen, while the northern states wanted these things to happen so as to expand their industries, and so as to have more and more amounts of industries, and also which would lead to profit. So this was another issue which was there between the northern states and the southern states. One more important thing which was there was that the issue of tariffs. What is actually tariff? Tariff means trade, or the tax which is applied on trade. Now the northern states wanted protective tariffs. Let me try to explain what is protective tariff. Suppose you are an Indian, and you do not have to suppose that you are an Indian. Most of the people who will be listening, or everyone who is listening, is an Indian. Now you are an Indian and you are manufacturing something. Suppose you are manufacturing mobile phones, and you want your mobile phones because you are new in the market. You have already so many big players like Apple, Samsung, Motorola, Lenovo, you have Oppo, Vivo, so many, Redmi, Xiaomi. So you have so many different players in the national market, or in the Indian market already. So you know that you cannot compete with those brands. So you will be approaching the government, and the government will understand your problem. And if the government wants to give your industry, or the local industry, or the Indian mobile manufacturer much more priority, then what will the government do is that the government will start increasing the taxes on the foreign made mobiles. What happens then? The mobiles which are being imported from different countries and which are coming to India, all those brands, Apple, Motorola, Samsung, Xiaomi, Redmi, Oppo, Lenovo, whatever those mobile brands are, if the taxes on those foreign brands are increased, what will happen is that the cost of those mobile brands will also increase very much. And if the costs are increasing, what happens is that people, or most people, will not be able to afford them. What happens now? People will now be looking for local alternatives, and people will be finding your mobile brand, and you are also making good mobiles, and people will start buying your mobiles. And the government will keep this kind of a high tax on the foreign goods until and unless you get established in the country. Once you get established, those extra taxes on the foreign brands are reduced, and now the foreign brands also can sell at proper prices. You are also an established brand now, and you are also selling at proper prices, and you are an established business. So this is something which is called protective tariff. So many countries use protective tariffs to give a boost to the local industries also. Now, when we are talking of protective tariffs back in the 1800s in America, the northern states wanted protective tariffs. Why? Because the northern states were becoming highly industrialized, and the northern states wanted protective tariffs. Now you understand why. Because they wanted their industrial produce or whatever they were producing to be able to be, or they wanted to establish themselves in the North American market, and they wanted to sell in the American market. They knew that they would not be able to compete with the European products, because the Europeans were industrialized much before the Americans were. So they knew that the European products which were coming in, they could not be, or they would not be able to match against those European products. So they forced the government, and the government applied protective tariffs. So they increased the taxes on the European goods which were coming in. So what this led to was that the southern states were much dependent on the imports. So they were bringing in lots of mechanized goods, lots of agricultural products, and the southern states were buying a lot of agricultural and so many other different commodities and items from the European markets. So the southern states understood that if protective tariffs are applied, then their costs will increase, because they were dependent on the imports. So the northern states wanted protective tariffs. Why? Because they were industrialized and they wanted their industries to get established. Southern states did not want protective tariffs. Why? Because the southern states were much more dependent on the imports, and protective tariffs would make the imports, or the cost of the imports, increase a lot. That would not be good for the southern states. So this was another reason why the northern states and the southern states had a dispute or were against each other. Now, there was the very important thing of slavery. As I explained, the northern states wanted slavery to end so that people would become free and could come to work in their industries, but the southern states did not want the slavery to finish, or the slavery institution of slavery to be abolished, because then who would be working on their farms for free? So this was another thing which was there. And the southern states, there was another thing which was happening. The southern states were producing agricultural products, and the southern states were not allowed to sell their agricultural products to the European markets on their own. So what happened was, the southern states used to sell their products to the northern states, or the businessmen of the northern states, and the businessmen of the northern states used to supply or used to sell those products to the European countries. Now, same thing happened also when there was imports. The southern states could not import those or any goods directly on their own. The imports would come first to the northern states, and then they would have to buy those imports from the northern states or from the businessmen of the northern states. So this increased the cost for the southern states, and they could not get a lot of profit on this. The northern states were earning a lot of profit because they were acting as the middlemen. They were the ones who were facilitating this trade. So this kind of a situation was there, and all of these things resulted in the northern states and the southern states getting or becoming against each other. And later on we'll be discussing how a few other factors led to the war, or this American Civil War, and what happened in the American Civil War. So in the next video lecture, we will be discussing about all those reasons which we left out in this lecture, and we'll also be discussing the other aspects related to the American Civil War. Till then, please stay safe, be safe. If you did have any problem, or if you do have any problem, please mention it in the comment section so that I can get back to you. Thank you.